Welcome to the Lorehounds, your tour guides of Derry's dark past and float-worthy sewer systems. I'm Elysia, the voice calling to you from inside the crypt. And this is Season 1, Episode 4 of It, Welcome to Derry, Now You See It. And, I am joined by one other host, but it's probably not the one that you're expecting. Welcome, Mark, after all that talk. John's the one who couldn't make it today. He has other things that were more important for him to attend to.
Happy to be here. And John will forget all about what goes on in Derry until we drag him back. And then it'll all come flooding back, including past romances and childhood friends and trauma as well.
A lot goes on this podcast. I mean,
that's right.
All the childhood trauma. So we're here to talk about episode 4. We are going to get right into the spoilers with our hot takes. So be warned if you're not caught up, spoilers incoming. This is the first episode not directed by the creator, Annie Muschietti, but he did show up as a cameo. We'll talk about that. The director this time was Andrew Bernstein, who's a prolific TV director who also did an episode of Foundation fans, and Castle Rock, Stephen King fans, and a bunch of other stuff. And the writers were Guadalis del Carmen, who was a story editor in the first 2 episodes, and Gabe Hobson, who was a story editor on Midnight Mass. And this is their first written for TV by credit for both, which I think impressive work, personally.
Did you see Midnight Mass?
Yes.
Did we talk about that already?
I think we talked
a little bit about Flanagan, right? Yeah.
I've seen all the Mike Flanagan stuff. I am, I suppose, a fan.
What about Castle Rock?
Yeah.
I did not.
Wait, wasn't
Castle
there was
Rock.
no? I've seen the movie. There was a movie and a TV show, right? I've seen the movie and not the TV show.
There was a movie?
Am I mistaken?
There's a production company called Castle Rock, which is Rob Reiner's. Castle Rock is the sort of Stephen King remix.
Show. It's a supernatural series. Was it a movie also? Castle Rock. What's the one that Devin saw? Was that the TV series?
I don't know. I didn't see Castle Rock. Which it seems like something up my alley. I don't even remember what streamer it was on, but I didn't have that streamer at the time.
Yeah,
and it's
same
then
thing
I heard
for
it
me.
Wasn't great, and so
I heard that the first season was great, and then I'm making this up. This movie, this is like a Kazam movie moment, with the Mandela effect. And one of them is like the Berenstain Bears, where we all remember it differently than what is apparently the truth. So we must have jumped universes. And another Mandela effect one is about this movie Kazam. Do you remember a movie?
Like from the 90s, like a kid movie, a live action kid movie. I remember trailers. I never saw it.
It's not a real movie.
Wait, what? Okay, then
I can
it's
picture
a Mandela
the kid,
like a brunette, brown-haired little kid.
Everyone our age seems to remember this movie existing, but apparently it didn't.
I love how our generation's example, when someone wants to explain the Mandela effect, we go to pop culture, cinema, and children's books instead of literally Nelson Mandela. It's named after an actual thing that people supposedly experienced in the 70s, but to us, we're like, no, it's this kid book with a bunch of cartoon bears or, a movie that apparently didn't exist.
Right. Yeah. So our parents' generation, their thing is that they remembered Nelson Mandela dying in prison, which obviously by the time we were growing up was definitely not the case. Anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
Because we're on that timeline. That's why we're on the second timeline.
Exactly. We've jumped timelines to the worst timeline, obviously, but
anyways, I haven't seen Castle Rock, but I do think it's interesting. I hope to eventually, because we've got Dick Halloran in this, and I know maybe I'm jumping too far forward, but to what extent is this going to also turn into a cornucopia remix of Stephen King? Is there going to be a dog named Cujo that walks up, and is there going to be a virus reference, and et cetera?
We got a Shawshank reference this week,
right?
So, yeah. All right. So let's jump in before we get into the episode itself. Let's give our hot takes. And just the premise of the episode is Shaw orders Halloran's aerial search with Leroy and Polly after a disappointing find. Rose joins a tribal meeting about the military in Derry while Ronnie's group tries to photograph and Orisha. And yeah, we'll get into what all that means. But overall, what did you think about this episode, Mark?
Um, I think I'm a little more mixed on this episode relative to the first two. I liked a lot about it. I liked the Orisha stuff. I thought it was very Stephen King to have these kids come up with this possible explanation, but then it ultimately not working because why would it, right? And then they got to go to the next thing. But there's just a few things about the plotting of it that felt a little like more writerly in this, like a little bit of getting more point A to point B. I don't know. I feel like the jury is still very much out for me on some of these aspects. The military knowing all about this, like I can't tell yet if that's going to lead to really awesome things or that's kind of going to ruin this. So I felt like this episode, I liked a lot of individual scenes, but I was left a little bit like guarded about it, I guess. And some of that might be because I'm a fan of the property in general, or just kind of a little worried that they're going to get bogged down and lost in the sauce. But there was some stuff I really liked. I really liked a lot of the Halloran stuff. I did like a lot of the kids stuff. There wasn't a whole lot that I could really, as I was thinking about it, call out as a problem. But there's just, I guess, cracks there that I'm hoping are just kind of temporary. I don't know. I think as we talk, I'm going to determine what I actually think as we go. Where are you at?
Yeah, I liked this episode. It was less intense than the previous episodes, but I think that it's I'm not sad for that. The ghost chase whole thing, that was silly but fun, and I don't know, I enjoyed that. It felt a little like Star Warsy or something, just
We'll talk about it. Yeah.
yeah, more Goonies or whatever. And I like to have that aspect also in this. I'm a sucker for found family stories. I like the gang when the gang all gets together, and this was that episode. So
Yep.
it was pleasing to me. I really enjoy the pacing. I think it's interesting that you used writerly as an adjective. And I guess I do like things that
An
are
adverb, Elysia.
adverb. Sorry. Yeah. I am obviously drawn to things like that. So I really like the writing in this show. And I thought that the pacing was great in this episode, the way it set up so many different pieces. And of course, next week is the mid-season. So I expected this to be a setup episode for probably there's going to be some sort of climatic event next week. And I thought that this set that up well. I didn't expect the full cold open from 1908 because, as we've talked about before, that would be the timeline for season 3. So it's interesting they're getting so far into that right now.
Yeah. We'll talk more about it, I assume, but interesting indeed.
Yeah. I think the photography and the cinematography in this show is absolutely gorgeous. They're doing very interesting things with the camera, and the production design is impeccable. I really like all the historical details that go into this. I think that they're using the sound mixing very well. This just to create that sense of unease with, even in moments that seem like they should be fine, but then there's something in the sound mixing that lets remind you we're still in a Stephen King story and nothing's ever fine. I know a lot of people have been bitching about the CGI. I think the CGI looks fine to, in many places, quite good, the amount of detail. I think people need to keep in mind how difficult and time consuming it is to do this level of CGI, and therefore it's also quite expensive. So this is something we could have never had this kind of level 5 years ago, even on television. So I think that we need to be kinder to them. And maybe, people say maybe they should use just less CGI, more practical effects. And yeah, I don't hate that idea either. Definitely the films were also CGI heavy. And I thought that that's where the second film was at its weakest, was the climax, when it just gave itself over to, let's just do a bunch of trippy visuals, and I kind of lost the plot. I don't know if you agree with that.
100%. And I think the great scene here that as an example of that is the skeleton man, I think he's called, chasing him in the woods. Like everything's good up until the teeth, right? And the teeth was a choice. And I completely agree that like the CGI itself looks fine, but the CGI, I am one of the questioning the choice of doing the CGI at all. Because I don't know that he needed those teeth, and you couldn't have just put a thing in his mouth to make his teeth creepy. Because they did look, that's when it starts to look more like a video game boss, right?
See, I get that, but the teeth were also where I was like, wow. And then I suppose it also is because like I've worked in an animation company. I've, know VFX artists, and I know how difficult that is. So I was like, wow, that's actually really
Sure, yeah.
impressive. And is it perfect? No, but these episodes were expensive enough.
As a guy who is really profoundly overeducated with music, but still tries to write like pop songs, I have at many times done things that are needlessly hard to do that ultimately please the audience less, right? I have in the past written songs that were overwritten. And so I don't know, I'm not going to be the worst detractor, but
Right.
I really liked the first film, but even that first, to me, the first time I saw it chapter 1, it felt like a lot of buildup, right? I'd read this when I was a kid. I had watched the miniseries as a kid. And the scene with Georgie in the sewer at the very beginning is just perfect. And then Pennywise opens his mouth and it looks like a God of War game on PlayStation 4 or something. And even that, and I love that first film. I was just like, oh, you didn't need that. Just cut, right? So I think Muschietti has a thing where he likes these kind of over-the-top visual effect scare instead of the we're going to cut away before you see the thing scare. And it's possible that's just a matter of taste, that I have a sort of different taste. It's scarier if I don't see that, and it's scarier if it's practical. But he clearly doesn't think so. I think he thinks this is the way he wants his things to look. And I can't like tell him he's wrong, but it's not necessarily how I would do it if I were trained at all, which I'm not. So it's not at all about it not being hard. And I think it is well done. It's just, there's a matter of just a vibe choice that clearly other people in the fandom are having even bigger issues than we are, I think.
I mean, I think there's also like, it feels like these days people have gotten very demanding with the CGI, and also at the same time where VFX artists have been, we've talked about it a lot in this podcast in general, VFX artists have been severely overworked, and they've neared strikes, or certain guilds have actually gone on strike. And yeah, there's a dawning realization that they're human, and that this stuff takes a lot more time than people want to admit, including studio execs, and that they need to ease up on that. And that might, I think that has translated to, in general, maybe a little bit less polished CGI, because they've decided it's okay if we regress a few years in quality just to be able to have the quantity, I suppose.
Yeah, and I think we as audience have also gotten spoiled in the same way that everything in the 90s that was CG looked terrible because we had all seen Jurassic Park, and we were like, why don't you just do that thing that nobody has ever done even since? And there's been a few properties in the last few years that have done that awesome mix of practical and CGI really well. And so now when we see just CGI, we're like, what are you doing? Why aren't you the best thing I've ever seen? This would look so much worse if it was 10 years ago or whatever, but we've seen a few things that you know, and I'm trying to think what it would be. Would it, like, I feel like The Last of Us does a blend there. Like a lot of stuff in the last few years is really kind of.
Well, it's like they spend so many millions to get Hulk perfect for, I mean, I guess it was Ragnarok, in the Marvel universe. I'm talking about for anyone who doesn't know. And then later people are like, oh, well, why doesn't She-Hulk have that same, hundreds of hours put into the texturing, that sort of thing? Like, because they didn't, that was, you got spoiled by this thing, and now they have that asset they can use, and they're just not investing the time and money to do the same for every single character, because that was
it's not
really
$1 billion.
a lot.
movie. Yeah.
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 So, I mean, you're not going to,
Well,
I'm
but
not
I
going to
wanna
be here harping all the time
right.
on the CG, but it's there. I can't
I wanna
ignore it,
one thing about the teeth, though, since you brought that up, is that, I do note it's one of the things that seems to that there are certain identifying features because the yellow eyes or Pennywise as the clown, whatever, this entity changes form. So there are certain features that we see come back to remind us this is the same entity.
Yeah.
And, one of them is the teeth. And I don't know how you feel, but I found, for example, the teeth in last week's the birth scene with the, Ronnie getting caught in the bed. To me was terrifying, and I thought the teeth were really well used there. Did
I thought that
you
was a lot better of a scene.
Okay.
Look, I actually didn't have a problem with the scene of him running through the jungle. It's just, or the jungle, Jesus, the Maine,
forest.
the temperate rainforest of Maine. No, the woods, and I didn't have a big problem with it. It just looked kind of goofy to me, and it was very well lit, right? I think that, meaning like brightly lit. I think that the scene last week was more effective, though, the birth scene in general. But that birth scene also started with a very different vibe. Like, she's trapped in this membrane and she's covered in goo. It looked a lot more visceral, pardon the pun.
There
But
definitely was more practical there. Yeah.
I think your point about the teeth being a signifier of Pennywise is really well put. On the other hand, it could be a red balloon, right? Like, they still chose that as their signifier, right? And they chose something that you said is really hard to do.
They only just introduced the clown aspect this
today,
week, so,
yeah. And that's an interesting thing that maybe we'll get into. The kids have, not counting the adults saying the entity and stuff, but the kids have jumped to the conclusion that this is one entity. And I'm not sure why there's any reason they should think that instead of
the teeth.
Well, but like,
I don't know.
They're just monsters. There's monsters and ghosts here, everybody. Like, this is not, it's only maybe in this episode that you could start to think that there's a thing. Whereas in the original story, it's more a thing is talking to you. In it, they're calling it an it, not a them, right? And the clown is one of those things, but it may not even be everybody's first encounter. I can't remember. I don't think it is, but it is a little bit jumpy to conclusions for the sake of the audience, I think. Because if anything, this is, there's 3 ghosts in the woods or in the cemetery, right? That are not one thing casting an illusion. So
but
I hope
they made
don't,
the assumption before they saw the ghosts, and they were introduced to it as a single, like, malformed bat entity, baby bat.
The baby, but like, I guess the audience knows that the baby thing is the mom and is the ghosts and is the pickle, but we haven't had a scene where the kids are wondering if that's true. They just sort of assume that's true, and it is what it is. This is 8 episodes. You said 8, right? We're almost halfway.
8.
And it's also like, well, we don't need a lot of hand-holding when the audience all knows that. So I get it. But, it's an aspect. It's part of the aspect that, I harped a little bit on that first episode of possibly powers being broken a little bit of what Pennywise is capable of in that first scene in the car. And you could say similar about the cemetery here. Like, it's just, that's a little blurry, and it's okay. They're going for it. And I'm okay just not watching a conversation where the kids piece it together. They're piecing together other things. It's enough piecing together for one season, probably.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't bother me. Okay, do you have any other last hot takes before we get into the episode breakdown itself?
I would just call out continued use of unfamiliar, really old music for mood, right? Whether it's that one, the vaudeville song "Shine On Harvest Moon" at the beginning, the one in the end credits, "The Devil Caught Me Napping." I don't know that there's a lot of depth to any of it. Like, I didn't look up the Hungarian American composer who wrote that last song in any detail or anything like that. but it is very king to have nonstop sort of pop culture references. I will say, though, that kings are almost always big boomer tent poles. Like he'll quote like Neil Young, and then he'll quote, I don't know, like Bob Dylan or something. It'll be these things that everybody knows.
Well, everybody his age knows. Yeah.
Everybody his age knows, exactly. And so does everybody in 1908 know this tune at the beginning? Probably yes. So it is just kind of an interesting thing, because we had some music, even the theme song. The theme song to me is completely forgotten by time, but that was a hit song in its day, right? In the 50s or whatever it was. So I like the pop culture references. I hope that they follow the time periods, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So far, so good. Like we got into a big discussion about cameras and the cameras they were using. And so I went down a little rabbit hole online, and yes, they are quite accurate. This is up there with me with Interview with the Vampire in terms of making interesting use of the time period and doing your research into that. So,
and that's a central conceit of the show. So it's good that they're paying attention to that and taking it seriously.
So that leads us directly into the summer of 1908, when a 12-year-old Francis Shaw visits a carnival where he is spooked by a sideshow tent. His father, witnessing this, tells him to man up and gives him a slingshot he won for him. They have car trouble. They have, buggy trouble on their way home. And Francis is sent to ask members of a local native tribe for water. There he meets a young Rose, and they become slingshot buddies. The slingshot squad? While hanging out together, Francis and Rose encounter a demonic force in the woods, which Rose assures him cannot leave that area. After a summer spent falling into young love, Francis tells Rose his dad is being transferred and he's leaving Derry, but he'll always remember her. She assures him that he doesn't know it yet, but he'll forget everything about Derry once he's out of town. So what did you think about this whole flashback?
I've only seen this once. I missed that last piece. She says you'll forget. What was I doing? Writing down notes from the previous scene?
It's not in the opening, but it's later in the episode. They're sitting at the dock together, and he's like, I have to leave. I'll remember you always. And she's like, you're not going to.
She says you're not. Okay. So there's a lot to talk about here. So 1908, do the math. We're going back 2 cycles, right? And we think this is going to be season 3. So are we seeing the kids that will be our Losers Club in season 3? If so,
but won't they grow up by the time
they're going to be like 15?
I mean, are they recording stuff now, or are these characters going to somehow be cut out of that story? But we know they survived to become adults, so
but also
handle that.
They survive to be adults, but don't. Like, she stays there.
Right. So she should be there in the story in season 3.
She's not Mike Hanlon. She's not dedicating her adult life to find a way to kill it when it comes back, right? So Mike Hanlon, meaning in It Chapter 2, is he stayed back and he's like ready and he's going to contact the buddies to make them come back, and he's terrified of it, but he's going to do it. I guess I would believe, and this would help the fact that these actors are going to be too old to really be the prime age, I think, for at least what we think the tribe needs to be, the troop that fights it. Maybe they don't go that far, or maybe they never get, there's a lot of adults in Derry that probably had some encounter with it as a child, right? Or even as an adult, and have suppressed that or ignored it in that way that Derry does. But it's hard for me to think that these two are going to get down into the sewers and fight this thing, in the sense that it's going to escalate to that point. And then we see that dock scene and he's like, oh, I'm leaving. And that's just that. And she lives her life sort of talking to her, I guess her nephew or something like that about it. But like, I don't know, like she didn't dedicate her adulthood to it in the same way. I have so many questions if this is not our season 3 era. We know that, but if this is our crew, so many questions.
I mean, it's interesting you made we'll talk about her as an adult more later, but it's interesting you made the comparison to Mike Hanlon because she's not only the one who stays behind in town and thus remembers because those who leave forget, but she has this extra insight we're being teased about. It's like we don't know what the
Mm,
local tribe knows yet. I mean, we have some idea based on there's that whole aspect of the second film where Mike talks about visiting the local tribe and them telling him things, and we learn things from that we know are true for this show. But yeah, we she is the one who has the insider knowledge, like Mike did.
yeah. I'm just so curious where it goes and like how far it goes. But I like these characters. I think it's cool. I think the slingshot is a iconic
Yeah.
object. I
Mhm.
think
Underused in the new films.
definitely, but the thing about the slingshot is that it sort of encapsulates the belief being the way, in the same way that the battery acid, the asthma inhaler can be battery acid and that will damage it.
Mhm.
It is in the form of a werewolf. You put a melted down piece of silver as a slug in the slingshot and you can hurt it
Right.
because you
Right.
believe werewolves are vulnerable to silver. And so we don't see that here, but it's sort of this, as a kid weapon, you kind of believe it can do anything. And that actually means it can,
Right.
including fight this. If I were a kid, I mean, I totally believe, yeah, this thing, I'm going to hit this thing in the eye and it's going to be super hurt by it. And
Yeah.
sure enough, it was.
Yeah, because I have an anxiety disorder as a kid, I would have the most intense nightmares.
Mm.
And actually watching horror and playing video games were things that helped me get over that because they helped me do lucid dreaming. And so in lucid dreaming, I could have rules like that. Like, well, suddenly I have the weapon that destroys the demon that's stalking me and killing my family. So it is like very much all of the hallucinations. They remind me so much of my nightmares growing up.
I think that's the point, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Perfect. They're hitting you.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure
And
Stephen
the
King had
dream
nightmares
logic,
like that
right?
too. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. So, okay, what else do I got about this? Red balloons, first sighting of red balloons,
Right. Right.
and clown
So
imagery.
right. So we know from the movies and from the book, but we can say this because we know from the movies that this Pennywise entity is based on a man who actually worked at the circus named Bob Gray. And in the second movie, we heard that Bob Gray had a daughter who claimed to be Mrs. Kirsch, who Beverly went and visited in her
Hmm.
father's old house and had that whole horrifying scene.
Speaking of
So,
bad CGI.
yeah, okay, yeah,
Sorry,
yeah,
sorry,
very
too
similar
soon, too
to.
soon. We just talked about that. All right.
But so okay, we have the circus here. Is Bob Gray
Mm-hmm.
at the circus, and is that clown child? The clown child, by the way, is credited as young Periwinkle, but is that Bob
Huh.
Gray's daughter? And it's interesting the attention that was played with the camera and the sound effects to her stroking that horn. Will that horn mean something in this story?
I don't know. Like, it's also so possibly just vibey, right? Like trying to set up clowns as an idea. But like, Bob Gray is one of the kind of pseudonyms of Pennywise actually here? Or because the other thing I was thinking, I tend to be somebody that kind of thinks clowns are creepy. But
Right?
I think that's a kind of a new thing. I think that
Do
is,
I think clowns are creepy because of it?
well, or let's just say it was within the cultural sort of zeitgeist for Stephen King to write it in the 80s as a creepy clown. And we had Chucky movies and stuff like that, creepy dolls. But going back 75 years, I feel like clowns might have just been a avatar of joy, right? I don't know if in 1908 a kid would see a clown and be creeped out like a kid in the 80s, or even I think the novel It, set in the 50s, presumes there's some creepy element. Like, is our parents' generation, or the boomers, the ones where that became a thing as a kind of rejection to 50, 70, late 1800s circus stuff? And obviously the clown stuff goes back all the way to like Commedia dell'arte in Europe and all sorts of stuff you could make up in East Asia and all that. This has been a thing for hundreds of years. But I just wonder, like, is Francis creeped out by a clown at all? And I wonder if they'll explore that at all, because you'll see in the backstory aspects to it, the interludes, and I'm not going to spoil any specifics, but Mike is reading as a librarian some microfiche or whatever, and he's reading some newspaper article, and there'll be some atrocity happening in Derry, and there's a quote of someone saying like, and there was a funny fellow there too.
Right.
And we go, as the reader, we go, oh, that means Pennywise was there. But this person wasn't, oh, there was a creepy clown. They were like, oh, it's a clown. It's a, and so in 1908, it's possible a vaudeville context, you know, Barnum and Bailey's circus is still at its height. I think like there could be clowns everywhere. And there's no reason Pennywise would really take that form as much, because it's not something that has this sort of double meaning of joy and fear yet. I don't know. I just wonder where they go with that.
I mean, isn't it that Pennywise started to take these more gentle forms at first? Because at first, like with the local tribe, Pennywise would take the form of birds of prey or something like that, you know, predators, and then people would just run from Pennywise, and of course, yeah, you want to salt the meat with fear, but it's better if you can lure them in first, get them to drop their defenses, and then scare them. So much more flavor. So isn't that why Pennywise took the clown persona? Because that is one that can draw in kids before horrifying them.
I think so, because he's not showing teeth at first, right?
Right.
And I wonder, so they seem to be acting, Rose is talking like Pennywise can't leave the woods.
Right.
We know Pennywise pretty much can't leave Derry. And reasons for that aren't fully explored, like in the novel. Like Pennywise is Derry on some level, is like wound up. But is this a thing where for some reason Pennywise can't leave these woods for some unrelated reason? Or is this a thing where Derry, the town, has expanded, and those woods that we see in 1908 are what Derry is built on, like more fully, right? Are the sewers built under those? Like, I don't know, like, because it's hard for me to track like why the boundary of his agency would change, kind of.
Yeah.
From era to era.
I think two things. One, yeah, indeed, expansion, and the other is whatever rituals. We know there's the ritual of Chud that the Native Americans have been using to keep this entity at bay. Perhaps whatever happens in the 1908 storyline, which we know and has already been said in the movies, ends in something called the Ironworks Fire. Perhaps that frees Pennywise. Like, do we get this 3-episode show that goes backwards in time, and it ends on the most pessimistic, where Pennywise is released to menace for generations to come over the rest of the TV show and the 2 movies?
So you think that he gets expanded by one of the atrocities of the earlier seasons? Yeah,
perhaps.
That's
and I also was thinking the same as you too, that I'm sure the town expanded into this area as well, and maybe the woods is where that house is built now, where, you know, the sort of haunted house that we see in the movies. That's yeah.
House on Neibolt Street.
Right.
When did you flag that this kid was the general?
To be honest, I didn't they call her Rose? I mean, I think I figured out it was Rose first.
Well, there's that really cool, speaking of good effects, that morph between them later. That was really, I mean,
that was a good
first of all,
effect.
good casting. Second of all, good cinematography. Third, good special effects.
Yeah, they really got someone whose face is like the same, like her cheeks are the same shape as adult Rose. So that morph really worked. And I think they did the morph twice this episode.
Oh yeah, I noticed it only the first time, but pretty cool. Um, do you think there's a chance that some carny, what do you call it, like a barker or whatever,
Hmm.
would step right up, and then not take any money from that kid? He just walks in. It
Mm,
was like, what kind of capitalist robber baron era enterprise is this that you can
right.
go in and see the show without having to drop a nickel or a penny or whatever?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I found the carnival barker a bit suspect, but maybe it is interesting. We know that Pennywise or Yellow Eyes or whatever cannot yet reach where this carnival is. So everything, the scares that young Shaw saw inside the sideshow tent
Mm.
were just real, just actual people. Um, and then so he saw what they call the skeleton man, and then that scared him. So in the woods, that's what the entity showed him is the skeleton man because it scared him. Only, yeah, it's Yellow Eyes in the woods. So I think that was a really cool setup, and I think it's just like they're setting this unnerving feeling, so you don't know what you should be afraid of yet.
Right.
And this is also, by the way, where we saw inside that tent, Andy Muschietti, the show creator, the movie director. He cameoed as the cigar smoking organist.
Totally didn't catch that. Great catch.
Right.
Good
Thank
look.
you,
He's got a
internet.
cool
Yeah.
look. He fits the period. He fits
Yeah.
the. He looks good with a. I hate to glorify it, but he looks good with a with a cigar in his mouth. It's just kind of a cool. That guy had a cool vibe, and completely did not know that it was Muschietti.
um okay, so the other question is, did the town expand into the forest, or is the forest, isn't it in the book we always hear when little Georgie disappears and stuff, Bill's like, "Oh, we have to check the Pine Barrens." The Pine Barrens, is that the Pine Barrens?
And the Barrens is like their haunt. That's like where they live essentially as kids. That's a good question. I don't. This is one of those things where I never quite. I'm not a very visual reader.
Hmm.
Um, And I always, as a kid, and as an adult, I never quite get what he means by the barrens. Like, does that just mean the wilderness? Does it mean that the pine has been cut down? Like, what does it mean? Because the barrens, it's the barrens, the barrens, the barrens, the entire
Right.
novel. And the whole time I'm like, I don't know what that means. I don't speak, I'm not a native New Englander. I am an expat New Englander. Do you know what the barrens are in it?
I mean, it's something I've heard referenced, but I grew up in Pennsylvania and we did not call anything the Barrens. We did play in the woods, but in the TV show, or sorry, the movies, we see them, playing in the woods along this river
Yeah.
or stream or whatever we're classifying this body of water as.
It's just like
Um,
marshy forest, maybe.
right, right. Right. So I don't know, New Englanders, if you know if there's a particular meaning to the Barrens, please let us know.
Our Mainer affiliate is definitely not watching this show. Marilyn is not
No,
not into it.
no. Maybe she's listening anyway, but maybe not. This might be a step too far for her.
Tell us about
Um,
the Barrens of your part of Maine.
right. Right. Yeah, that's a shame that we have someone in the network who lives in Maine, but Stephen King, definitely not her cup of tea.
No way.
I did notice more turtle references. They're making sure that there's turtle references in every episode. Like we saw the prizes, or no, it wasn't the prizes. It was like the things that they were shooting at the carnival
Mm.
were there was a clown and there was a turtle, which is we referenced earlier is in this Stephen King cosmology, like the opposite of the Pennywise entity in a lot of ways, like the antagonist of the Pennywise entity, the good one. Um,
Interesting you say opposite because that's
hmm. Why?
when do we want to talk about the turtle? Are we
I
talking
mean,
about
might
the
as well
turtle
now.
today? Or
Sure.
should we talk? I'm like, part of me is like, oh, shoot, should we wait for
Well, I mean,
John? Or am I
yeah,
like, should we not wait for John? Should we not subject him to this conversation? Because
maybe
the reason
they'll reveal more since they're teasing it so much. But
the reason that I say that I kind of noticed your phrase opposite is because the
mhm.
idea of opposite in terms of alignment and directionality is very central to the idea of the turtle and the sort of greater cosmology that's here. And they are oppositional forces, but you could actually say there is a thing that is opposite the turtle, and it is not it. But I don't know how much we want to. I'm happy to talk about it, but we could do it now, or we could do it later in the season. I don't know. But
well, let's not go too deep, but
okay.
But just very briefly, since you mentioned, what do you think? What is the opposite then, if not mature in the turtle?
It's not what is the opposite of Pennywise. It is what is the opposite of Maturin the turtle. The opposite of Maturin the turtle is Shardik the bear. So and that doesn't mean they're enemies. It's just, it's a whole thing. Think of, for the sake of simplifying this conversation, almost think of these creatures, these animal things, as they're called guardians, and they're sort of like almost gods, but almost just sort of forces that occupy sort of, oh my God, I can't. I either have to explain it or I can't explain it. But like and I do want to talk about it because it's fascinating, and I feel like we might actually get a little of it, but I feel like if I open it up, it's enough to say for now that the turtle represents a good forces, right? But it is on it with a lowercase I is on a sort of spectrum of polarity with other things like it, that Pennywise might be equivalent in power or similar in power and similar in origin, but Pennywise is not on that plane, is not on that spectrum, that pantheon, so to speak. So are like Lord of the Rings fans, if we said like, oh, this might work. If you think like the Valar, if you've got the Valar as Melkor and Ulmo or whatever, I'm trying to think who the Mandos or whatever are, like equivalent plane of power, but also equivalent roles in society. And some of them might be diametrically opposed to each other. But then you've got Tom Bombadil. Tom Bombadil might be just as powerful as one of those guys. Tom Bombadil could be God himself or whatever. But Tom Bombadil is not on that plane. Tom Bombadil does not necessarily play by the same rules or serve in the same kind of societal function, for lack of a better term. And that's a way that we could say that Pennywise is kind of related. Pennywise might be truly godlike in some ways, but isn't serving the role as a guardian of the beam, which I can explain in more detail later. So not opposite, like, is Tom Bombadil the opposite of Melkor? I don't think so. I think like Manwë is the opposite
chaos
of Melkor
agent
in some way.
but a positive, beneficial chaos agent, I suppose.
Sure. I don't know. Did I just convolute everything?
Well, I think it is inherently convoluted. Like Stephen King, it doesn't fully define it, and I know you've said you don't want it to be fully defined. Keep it mystic. I do think it's interesting how they're playing in with the fact that they've added this Native American tribes history. We'll again get to them a bit later, and made that a more prominent element of this tribe. It is important to note that a whole lot of Native American tribes, including my own, the Potawatomi, and I have to say that the tribe in this is also based on Eastern Algonquin tribes, so similar. They call North America Turtle Island, because it's like the continent is on the back of a turtle, which there's a lot of overlapping mythologies about humanity living on the back of the turtle, which is obviously where Stephen King got this Maturin idea to begin with. So it will be interesting to see how they tie all this together.
This relates to the Wheel of Time in the world building, in the sense that I always wondered in the Wheel of Time, how do they know any of this? How do they know that people get reborn? How do they know that time is a wheel? How do they know? Like, how does
because it is passed down.
tribe, but passed down by who? Like who? And I want to, how do we know? I want to,
Mhm.
original human beings ever. I do want to talk more about how do they know later in the episode, but it is interesting because it's different when you get to the Dark Tower. It's different because most of the Dark Tower takes place in a place called Midworld, which is essentially a hub world between dimensions. And so the turtle is a thing there. The turtle actually is a character that you could theoretically interact with, which is different. So like the main characters of the Dark Tower learn about this mythology because it is real. The tower is an actual thing, right?
Mhm.
But on Earth, it's all somebody would have probably had to come from Midworld and explain this to Rose's ancestors. And
Sure.
honestly, that probably happened, right?
Yeah.
That is well within keeping of what could be possible. It's beyond the scope of this story, though. But
Right. Well, yeah,
super
we'll
interesting.
see. We'll see how, because now since they are mining so much, we have the 1908 set up here. We have reference to the Bradley Gang massacre with that, but that car that was buried. We'll get to that in a minute. But that's the 1935 story, so season 2. Yeah, I think that they are going to go. They're setting up these big set pieces that we know are part of these timelines. So in those seasons themselves, I assume they're going to explore a lot more of the cosmic weirdness.
Yeah.
All right. Last question before we got to take a break, but last quick question. Does this mean, since Shaw was obviously he was not racist as a child, he clearly had a romantic affection, it seems like, for young Rose, and perhaps there seemed to be chemistry as they're older. Is he legit not racist? Like, are we being unfair to him by suspecting him in previous episodes?
I guess I'm struck by the optimism for the human condition that, and I'm not saying he is racist, but that
He's
you think
privileged, that's for sure.
someone being romantically inclined to somebody of a different ethnic group means they can't be racist. I think I've seen a lot
Right.
of evidence of the opposite
Right.
in
But
adult men who fixate on women of other, like,
But
I'm
here's
not
the
saying at
question: is
all that's what's happening here.
have we seen him be racist also toward the black men who he works with in the military? Have we seen him be racist toward anyone? Are we just suspecting him because we can't believe that a white
Because
man
he's a
in
general in the
1962
60s.
Yeah.
I jury's out on this guy because this guy could be, look, if he is a loser, so to speak, you said, what did you say, like slingshot buddies or whatever?
Mhm.
If he is a
Slingshot
Losers Club
shot
analog,
squad. Yeah.
right, awesome. If he was that equivalent in 1908, he can't be like all bad. Like that doesn't, that character's got to be kind of, we haven't seen any evidence. They all flawed people, but we haven't seen an evidence of a truly like bad or like overall on the balance bad person fighting Pennywise. It just sort of it's your love and your fraternity and your like solidarity with your friends that make you able to fight it. So if he is that, if we're seeing a guy who fought it as a kid, he's a white guy in the 60s who's an adult. I'm sure there's like, he might be lowercase r racist, not capital R racist, but
Right.
he's good as his core, probably, according to what Stephen King is normally doing with these forces. However, we don't know that that's true. He could be more of a Henry Bowers type, and Henry Bowers is a bad guy more, but like a guy who comes in counter with it and kind of can't resist it. But then, like, we don't know where the story's going, but I think he might be a totally stand-up guy. He could totally be, but he could not be. I don't know.
I mean, yeah, there are definitely suspect things about his behavior that we'll get to after a quick break. We'll jump to the present timeline. Okay. Now that we're on the other side of Halloween, I'm officially ready to declare it. It's the holiday season. And shopping early this year is definitely a good idea with all of the shipping uncertainties. Luckily, Uncommon Goods takes the stress out of gifting with thousands of unique, high-quality finds you won't see anywhere else, so that you can cross the important names off your list and relax. You might have heard me say it before, but I've been known to turn to uncommon goods over the years for gifts, especially for my family and close friends, the people I want to treat to something unique, memorable, handmade by creative entrepreneurs, something that will last. I've especially plundered the puzzle categories, bought lots of unusual jewelry and accessories. One time I got my friend's son these little baby booties shaped like tacos that still make me laugh every time I see a picture of them. And bonus, with every purchase you make at Uncommon Goods, they give $1 to a nonprofit partner of your choice. They've donated more than $3.1 million to date, so now is the perfect time to start exploring their site before your new favorite gifts sell out. And while you can take advantage of the limited time Lorehounds discount and get 15% off. So don't wait. Cross those names off your list before the rush. To get 15% off your next gift, go to uncommongoods.com/lorehounds. That's uncommongoods.com/lorehounds for 15% off. Uncommon Goods. We're all out of the ordinary. Okay, and we're back. And Mark, do you want to set up the present timeline?
But first, do you think he's racist? You asked. You asked me.
I mean, no,
I
I think that it's complicated, and I'm gonna put a pin in that until we get to
Fair enough.
that part of the discussion where he meets Rose again.
All right. Lily and Ronnie make up. Having served her time, Lily is discharged from Juniper Hill Sanatorium with a guilty conscience and prescription for antipsychotics. She approaches Ronnie to apologize for getting her dad in trouble, which got her sent back to Juniper Hill anyway. She says she will tell the truth about what she saw, even if that gets her locked up again. The two girls are friends again and begin to hatch a plan to convince the public that the weird things they saw in that movie theater were real. Okay.
So I went on a bit of a dive about the chloropromazine is the medication she's put on. It's an antipsychotic and used to treat things like schizophrenia. Although it's interesting that it is also used for the manic side of bipolar disorder. That makes sense, but also for ADHD, severe ADHD, nausea and vomiting, anxiety before surgery, and hiccups that do not improve otherwise. So it's a dopamine agonist, which means basically the theory, they're not completely sure how it works, but the theory is that, the dopamine that's that drug in our brain that we're always trying to hit when we're like checking our notifications all the time, eating the food, getting the warm flushes. Nicole would obviously explain all this better, although I do have
I believe a neurotransmitter is what she would call it. Am I correct
it
about
isn't.
that?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
I tend to use more casual language, and so it is also. So what it does is it's helping it's keeping the dopamine down, but it's also anti-serotonin, which is a related neurotransmitter, and antihistamine. And the key thing is it was developed in 1950. Apparently, it's on the World Health Organization's list of most essential medications still today. So it's definitely what they would have been using at the time. But of course, they think that she has schizophrenia or something. Of course, because what else would you think?
Well, my question for you is, does she suffer from a mental illness? Because we don't know the details of what happened with her father. What happened with her after her father's death? We don't think she was seeing ghosts and Pennywise and stuff, but if she was struggling enough that they put her in Juniper Hill, was it early 1960s lack of understanding of dealing with trauma or something? Or does she actually suffer from some kind of a mental illness that would cause hallucinations, and we're dealing with a character who is both seeing real horrifying events, but potentially also has brain chemistry that will cause her to see things, etc. I don't know that we know, really.
Well, could it have been an early Pennywise scare? Like this was one of the first signs he returned? Because it's interesting that they have not shown us this. They keep referring to this as this seminal event. Yeah. I presume we're going to see it in the future.
And I don't think we have any other examples in this story of a person who also suffers from
Right.
like hallucinations just naturally due to their own brain chemistry.
Right.
There's a lot of addiction in Stephen King where you'll see
Mm-hmm.
somebody that mental illness will very much be interacting with real horrific events sometimes in interesting ways. But the It story, it's not like one of those kids in It Chapter 1 was suffering from, was on antipsychotic medication, right?
Right. Right.
Does she
Yeah, I
need
mean,
that or not?
we have not seen, though, anything that any hallucinations or any other, unusual functioning of her brain outside
Yep.
of the scares from the entity itself. So I don't know. I'm reluctant to at this point. I think it would be interesting. Why not have it be both? Because there's I know people who have schizophrenia. It's a not uncommon condition for people to have or related conditions. So yeah, why not have both? But so far, we just haven't seen any evidence that there's anything to what's going on with her other than she's literally seeing things that are being shown to her by this evil entity.
Are we um are we to understand that she is on the meds and they didn't make a thing of it, right? But is she going to just be on the meds for the rest of the show? Or are we wondering if she is or isn't, like, because that does this question of whether presuming this medication works,
Mhm.
but if she doesn't even have this condition, then what does that do to your brain, right? So
Right. Right.
um
Yeah, I was
I
looking for
kind of feel
side
like we're not
effects. I
supposed to
don't see
wonder.
it yet, but yeah, they made such a
Right.
big deal about it that it must be.
I kind of think they probably aren't gonna investigate it further. Where
I
like
don't
I don't
know.
know.
I mean,
If
I
this
feel
were a
like they.
novel, yes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a TV show gives you more space for something like that,
Mm,
and the fact that opening, there's so many ties between the opening animation, for the title credits and what happens in the book and what we know happens in this universe. Like they
yeah.
show, for instance, that 1935 massacre, and they show a little boy in this sanatorium getting a lobotomy or about to get a lobotomy. And so they want us to be aware that that is a threat that's always hanging over Lily's head.
And they want us to be aware that Juniper Hill is a harsh place.
Right.
Like
Right.
there's basically no justification for giving a child a lobotomy,
Right.
right? So what's happening there is not necessarily certainly what we in 2025 would say is good science and good care, right?
Right.
So that makes the woman she speaks to curious because I don't know her name, but the woman who gives her the bracelet, it's like, okay, put them on the list of apparent caring, logical sounding adult in Derry because there's only a few and
Mhm.
she's one of them. And it makes me wonder, like, anytime I see that, I go, is this somebody who has a Rose type of thing, like has memories of what's really going on? It only seems like the people that can really truly acknowledge what happens in Derry are the ones that are the caring and empathetic adults. And I know that can't possibly be true, but it feels that way. They're
Right.
telling us this woman is more than just some woman who was nice. She's nice to Lily for a purpose.
Right. And I would say, yeah, the fact you don't know her name, she's actually not credited yet. They
Hmm.
just call her the head of the housekeeping staff, and she is in the opening credits. She's played by this actress Madeline Stowe, who is a recognizable actress. So this is not someone you give a bit throwaway part. And the fact they haven't named her is very suspicious. And also
Hmm.
the fact that she's immediately. I mean, I want Lily to have this in her life because, as we've discussed before, Lily's mother sucks. So it's great for her to have an adult woman who she can talk to like this. And this is a woman who's immediately like seems to be believing her. She's like, maybe people can't see what you can see. And then notably, before Lily leaves, she hands Lily back her charm bracelet, which has the turtle charm on it, which we discussed before may have protected Lily in the movie theater. Maybe one of the reasons why she's one of the ones who didn't die. So there's something like, I don't know whether to think this woman is malevolent entity or a good entity, but I do believe that she is aware of Yellow Eyes, I guess we'll call the entity.
I think it's interesting, all this talk about, is she good, is she bad, is Shaw good or bad? I can't think in this particular story of really a lot of duplicitous familiars of Pennywise. Like, I don't think people that are acting sort of either on behalf of it or even just sweeping it under the rug, I don't feel like they really have the capacity to hide it. Like, I can't think of anybody in the It novel or the movies, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that's secretly like undermining what the kids are doing and pretending like they're friends. I feel like people are just callous and mean. Like, it's sort of the rotten influence of Pennywise on the citizenry of Derry is very face value. Like, it affects your lizard brain. Like, you are just callous. You're glaring at Charlotte on the street when she's breaking up the bullies. You're not pretending you're nice. And so I feel like maybe if that's true, and I might be misremembering, that what you see is what you get. Like, if Shaw seems good, he kind of is when it comes to at least cosmic good. Like, maybe he's lowercase r racist. Maybe he's not a good,
boyfriend,
honest guy, good friend. Who knows, right? Like, he's dishonest when you play poker with him or whatever. But from the scale of whose side is he on when it comes to Pennywise and stuff like that, maybe he wouldn't be capable of acting good if he was really under the spell of Pennywise. I could be wrong on that, but something to watch.
Right. Well, I think, okay, so you brought up Henry Bowers earlier, who is the bully in the original movie. And here we have his grandfather, I suppose, Police Chief Clint Bowers. And he is this entity, or this, sorry, I should use that word more selectively. He is this person who is, as you say, more openly, like, he's clearly manipulating people with a smile, but he, to us viewers at home, we have no questions about, is this a good guy or not? So we visit so-called Hatchet Hank in jail. Police Chief Clint Bowers is questioning Hank Rogan, who maintains his innocence about the death of the children in the movie theater. But Bowers sets Hank up, claiming they have an eyewitness who saw him on the scene of the murders and that they found a pack of the unusual brand of cigarettes Hank smokes nearby. Which, first of all, if the scene of the murders is the movie theater, of course, it's very possible that Hank, at many points in which he's walking to and from work, dropped that pack there.
Every smoke break he takes every single day.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's interesting you said we don't have question as to whether he's good or not, right? And this is interesting because he seems, as far as we can tell, quite clearly framing somebody for a murder, a triple murder,
and
which is not upstanding behavior. But this is just regular old human,
right?
Corrupt institution crap, right? This is not. We don't know if this guy has any connection with anything evil with a capital E. It's just he got pressure from the mayor or this town selectman or whoever it was that we got to clean up this murder. And so he's willing to do it, but it's just plain old dirty, unfortunate, corrupt power, right? I think.
Yeah.
As opposed to something like his grandson who becomes sort of
a familiar
subject to the will of the evil with a capital E.
Yeah. I mean, and this is probably why this family becomes targeted to become allies of Yellow Eyes. But yeah,
I just thought of something really. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No. Go ahead.
Something really dumb. Hank is Henry. This guy's grandkid is named Henry.
Oh, right.
Is that it's not his kid, right? So it's got to be a coincidence. This guy's got some kid who Henry Bowers is probably not named after a guy that his grandfather felt guilty about putting into the electric chair.
Right.
I'm saying if this guy was Henry Bowers' father, which from age perspective probably he isn't, I'd go, oh my God, did he name his kid out of like guilt for this innocent man he killed? But I think it's just a coincidence because this guy's probably never telling his son or daughter, probably son if we're following the patrilineal name thing. He's not going to tell his son, hell, by the way, I feel so terrible about this innocent man we framed. But it is an interesting synergy of names. Right.
Well, I do think, this is where we get the reference to Shawshank Prison, which anyone who hasn't seen...
The movie is called The Shawshank Redemption, and the story is Rita Hayworth and Shawshank Redemption. No the.
Okay. But anyone who hasn't seen that movie, it's one of the best movies ever made. You should absolutely go watch it. But I have the feeling...
No ghosts, but quite violent at times.
But I think that just based on teases in the trailers and stuff, this prison might become a genuine part of this story as part of this sort of crossover mesh we have going on. So, I am worried. I don't think that we'll talk about the photo stuff later, but I don't think that's going to save Hank. I feel so sorry for Ronnie, who's having her father's already been nicknamed Hatchet Hank, and now she's getting. She and Lily have something in common now, where Lily was getting bullied for the fact that her father died, which is just horrible. But now Ronnie's getting bullied because people think her father's a murderer.
It's crazy to me, like the way that fiction depicts high school and middle school and stuff, where people are getting made fun of for being poor or for having parents who are in jail. And I don't feel like that's as much a thing now. Like
it's maybe gotten better, but it was definitely not a thing when I was in high school.
There were kids making fun of kids because their parents were dead.
I mean, not because I don't know about parents were dead, but definitely making fun of people for being poor and not being able to afford nice clothes, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I didn't have that. I don't know. That's just probably coincidence. But the idea, I get, look, if your dad is potentially a murderer, I can see people alienating you. But the idea that Lily's dad died in an accident and people are going to make fun of her for it as middle schoolers which have semi-functioning empathy engines in their brain is just baffling to me. But fiction tells me that's what happens or used to happen. By the way, Andy Dufresne is in Shawshank right now.
In 1962.
In 1962.
Tim Robbins' character, yeah.
Tim Robbins and Morgan Freeman, they're all in there. He's not planning his escape yet. Well, he certainly is, but he's not acting on it. So interesting. It doesn't have to matter, but he's in there a long while, so that's not surprising.
Well, for going he's in there, then yeah.
Yeah. He's in there starting in the 40s, so it's this would be the time period that we would need to see him if we were going to see him. And Red, Morgan Freeman's character, would be the one you would. If we do see a scene, it would be him. It would be the guy that everybody talks to get something.
Right.
That would be a trip. Whereas Andy Dufresne is mostly keeping his head low more.
Mm-hmm.
He's not a guy that everybody's going out to meet. Anyways.
Right. Could be a glimpse of him or something. Yeah.
It's a great, if people want to read Stephen King but aren't into horror, it's a really great short story, or a novella maybe. I would recommend different seasons in general. There's 4 stories. One of them is Rita Hayworth in Shawshank Redemption. Have you read this?
No. Mm-mm.
And one of them is The Body, which is then Stand By Me, is the film. So The Body is basically like It without monsters. So it's another like kids wandering through the woods, except they discover or they're looking for this body they've heard exists. There's Apt Pupil, which was also made into a film, which is a kid befriends a former Nazi that lives next door. And then the Breathing Method, which is the only one not made into a film.
Okay,
which
that's why I don't know that one.
Yeah, that one, and that one's let's just say it relates to Lamaze, and that's a crazy story.
Okay.
But anyways, that's a really good, not supernatural Stephen King work that's still got a lot of heart. Different seasons, yeah.
Oh, different seasons. Okay.
Yeah.
I liked the call out that they had this conversation with Rich and Will at school. And I love how Rich and Will are just, they're besties now, no questions. Like, we don't need to get into that.
Fast forward, yep.
Yep. And so Rich is Cuban American. This becomes important later, but he is also white presenting, talking to Will, who is clearly Black and from originally Louisiana. And Rich says to him, about, because Will says, well, what if Hank didn't actually do it? And Rich says, this is America. You can't just throw people in jail for nothing. And Will says, are we talking about the same country? So I'm glad that they called that out like that there's different experiences depending on what you look like.
It's interesting, too, because of Rich's positionality as being Cuban, and because we know, like, Cuba is very much a multi-ethnic society, as is a lot of Latin America. But the things that he's bringing up from his uncle / cousin / oh my God, is he making it all up?
Come from Africa.
It's Afro-Cuban stuff. It's not the sort of European lineage or even Taino or like sort of native lineage. It's very much the syncretism between Catholicism and the Yoruba, right? So it's interesting, like, if that's true, if he has a part of his family that's Afro-Cuban, he must have some level of understanding of all of this, but then maybe those folks aren't living here in Maine with him, right? And so he isn't seeing any of the sort of knock-on effects of colonialism, whereas, he might associate that more with his family back in Cuba, not up here. So it is just interesting, and it might just be a throwaway line, but he isn't bringing sort of Spanish, meaning Spain, supernatural elements into his conversations later. It's the Yoruba stuff. It's the Santeria stuff, which is more Afro-Cuban in lineage.
You must have the same reaction, us being of an age. You must have the same reaction as I do to any time anyone says the name Santeria. I don't practice Santeria. Which is, I looked up the lyrics. It's horrible. Like, it is a terrible song that I used to totally sing along with without thinking about.
It's very misogynist, yeah. So Sublime is fascinating because that song is so good. That band is so good. That song also, as titled Santeria, makes no sense. Like it's a throwaway line at the beginning, and he's talking about crystal balls. But I don't think crystal balls have anything to do with Santeria either.
He doesn't know what Santeria is. It was just a word.
Nicole and I are both huge fans of Sublime. There's a massive conversation about appropriation that needs to happen at some point on our podcast about Sublime because it's so good. But he's just like this dude from Long Beach playing all this reggae and talking about religions he doesn't know anything about and, making wonderful music. And it's like, what do we do with that? Right. I mean, I play music that is somewhat derived from, well, not more than somewhat derived, but very heavily influenced by Caribbean music, and is like, that's a layer of appropriation, especially since I'm more influenced by Sublime than the original source material anyways, right? So the idea that he names that song Santeria and that first line says Santeria, but then the rest of the song is about like being possessive about your girl. Like,
well, I think
weird.
It's also the fact that he's accusing his girl of going after someone named Sancho. And
his
so
Heina, you mean?
Actually chose that as a sort of racist. I don't know if Sancho is supposed to be Cuban, but yeah, it feels very icky looking at the lyrics now.
I don't even.
Anyway,
I don't even.
Sublime, man.
The thing about it is, 90s. It's like, we can leave it at that because if people are big Sublime fans, they're going to get mad at me. The thing about Sublime is that
it's a great song musically,
and the guys in Sublime really seem to come at all of that from real admiration and immersion into that kind of music and that culture in a way that isn't just a cash-in. Like, apparently Bradley Nowell was like obsessed with reggae and dub music. So it wasn't some white guy going, hey, I'm going to make a buck by stealing this music. It's like, he's the white guy who might as well be wearing dreadlocks. And you're like, what? Right. What are you doing here? Like, it's a little more honestly come by, put it that way. We can leave it at that. But yes, of anybody of our generation growing up in America, you say Santeria, you don't think syncretic religions, you think sublime.
Yeah. So I'm pushing that down in the back of my head. But do you want to set up before we get to the kids again? Do you want to set up what's going on with the adults?
Hunting for relics. A grown-up General Francis Shaw is disappointed to have found nothing of significance in the wreckage of the car dug up last episode, a relic of the Bradley Gang massacre of 1935. So he sends psychic Dick Halloran with pilots Leroy Hanlon and Paulie Russo and Shaw's old slingshot in a box to hunt down a psychic hotspot that marks the location of the entity the military is seeking. They find it, with Halloran having a vision of himself meeting Yellow Eyes in the sewers of Derry, stacked with floating bodies like in the 2017 movie. Caught up in the vision, Halloran nearly walks out of the helicopter, but Leroy saves him. Lots here.
Yeah, lots here. I know there are people who are, we hear Halloran's psychic abilities are improving, so it seems like he's being trained here. And I know a lot of people are asking what Halloran's psychic abilities are. It's The Shining, of course, which, yes, literally, like the movie, same character overlap. I'm about a quarter of the way through the novel now. I know at some point there's a reference to him being a cook on this military base, but here
there's a reference to Dick Halloran being a cook.
That's what I've heard that there is in the interludes in the novel.
I don't remember that, and that's probably because I hadn't read.
But yeah,
I hadn't read The Shining when I read it, and so it's only really later that I ever saw the movie and read the book, the movies, and then read The Shining. So I totally didn't notice that. There's a lot there though, and that's the kind of thing that will gently be inserted all the time in Stephen King. Like, sure, there are novels where there's actual crossover, where the Dark Tower, someone from another novel will be teleported there, stuff like that. But usually it's just like that. They'll just mention a person and that's it. Or someone in another town in another book will mention driving through Derry and seeing something creepy, and that's it. And they just leave it, right? So I wouldn't be surprised if at some point, because he had already written The Shining. Shining's, I think, only his third novel. He definitely had written it already when he wrote it. So I wanted to call out some folks on the Discord were saying, like, why is Mark being so cagey about the backstory? I love that they just called out season 2 spoiler, the Bradley Gang massacre in 1935 in the previous cycle. So then we can go, okay, they're not, the mystery of this is not going to be what happened. We're just going to know, okay, at one point, there's this explosion at the ironworks. At one point, there's a gang massacre. At one point, there's probably they're showing us on screen that, the ironworks explosion, they show us in the intro sequence. Like, this is a thing that happened, and we don't have to wonder what happens, but we're probably going to see how things happen.
Right. And there's references from this point in the timeline to something called the Black Spot.
Yes, which we're seeing take shape.
Right. Right. Yeah. So, because Dick asked Shaw, he's like, actually, my friends and I would like a place to drink, to just hang out and let our hair down without people hating on us.
This whole season, when it became clear, okay, there's black soldiers, they might be headed in that direction. I'm thinking, is this going to be in conversation with Sinners? Which is very much a story about what happens when we have the interaction of, a safe space for the black folk to hang out and supernatural entities. And I wonder, like, they couldn't have possibly seen Sinners before they wrote this, right?
No, I think that this is, another one that I think of is, what is it? It's called His House. I think it's on Netflix. It is really good about South Sudanese immigrants in London, I believe, somewhere in the UK. And their safe space, their home, their house is literally haunted. Really great horror movie for anyone who hasn't seen it. But yeah, I think that this is just a theme that comes up again and again because it's reflects life.
Yeah, supernatural amplification of real life.
Right. But so okay, but there were questions about what Dick's powers are exactly. And so what would you say The Shining is?
It's a good question. It's essentially psychic. Yeah, his house. It is on Netflix. Netflix. Adding to the list.
Okay.
The Shining is essentially psychic sensitivity, but it also can be related to seeing ghosts. You know, I don't know. Are we Doctor Sleep spoilers allowed?
Sure. Yeah, we said
Doctor
all Stephen
Sleep.
King spoilers. Or we're saying now all Stephen King spoilers on the table.
Fair enough. The ability to like cause somebody to peacefully enter death essentially is really like the Dr. Sleep, the kid in The Shining, grows up and he works in hospice, and his superpower literally is he comforts the dying, and he basically can essentially euthanize folks. And this is not a major spoiler. This is kind of where he starts the novel. That's his job. He can kind of kill them, but basically like let them just drift off in this beautiful way. And so everybody's always requesting him, and there's a cat involved that's always like with him when he does this. And so The Shining is kind of ill-defined in the sense that I don't know that any of the characters really know its full scope, but it's essentially telepathy / kind of clairvoyance, etc. Does that jiving with your understanding?
Yeah, I mean, we see it used in several different ways. Like in the movie, or in the movie, or in the book, it's based on The Shining itself. Obviously, they're seeing visions like we see here. Although I don't think it's that all the kids have The Shining, or maybe it is. I don't. We'll come back to my questions about Dick's interest in one of the kids, but we see obviously Dick he has some sort of psychometry where he's touching the slingshot and it's helping him to see things and to know the history of objects. And there seems to obviously also be some sort of mind reading capability, which we'll get into more in a moment with his conversation with
and I think that's what it is in The Shining, the story. It's a lot of that. It's a lot of him seeing into, you know, and folks who don't know, who haven't seen that or read it, Dick Halloran works at the hotel that this kid and his family move in as the caretakers. And before Dick leaves, he notices he can recognize the ability to channel the one power in this young kid, and he kind of lets him know, I know a little bit. We call it The Shining, and then later in the novel he'll come back. But in Dr. Sleep, we get a lot more Dick Halloran backstory, and I guess which
is also quite a good movie, I think. By the way,
yeah, I thought that was a good, pretty faithful movie. Well done. It's a different story vibe-wise. It's less of a ghost story, almost more kind of, I don't want to say adventure story, but like, you know, stop the bad guys kind of a thing. It's a different soul-sucking vampires. It's kind of a different thing, but it's good. So maybe we're jumping too far forward, but the ghostly woman floating in the sewers in his vision, what does she say to him? Like, he's coming or something like that?
Yeah, I think that was supposed to be his grandmother. Right.
So the thing about that is, if that is his grandmother is the person who teaches him about The Shining. His grandmother's the one who tells him the name The Shining and explains it. And his grandfather, I don't know if it's on the same side, but he has an abusive grandfather, sexually abusive grandfather. And Dick Halloran gets, later in life, essentially haunted by his abusive grandfather. And his grandmother teaches him to essentially Ghostbuster the ghost. So like it's a main kind of plot thing in Dr. Sleep that Dick, and then later he teaches Danny, grown up Danny, you can take a spirit and basically make a lockbox and imprison it almost inside yourself, kind of, so it can't haunt you anymore. And so this is the woman who taught him his psychic powers, but also teaches him this like ghost confining power, which I can't imagine is going to work here or be really related, because that's not what it is. But
maybe he'll try.
Is it coming? He's coming talking about Pennywise? Is it talking about abusive grandfather ghosts? Like, this is actually offering a lot of intersections to other books for something that, for the face of it, feels like a very Pennywise it-centric moment. We have somebody up in this floating, which is very much directly from the It Chapter 1 scene. So there's just a lot there related to him.
Yeah, it does beg the question, how much crossover are we getting? And I love it. I'm bring it on, because that's in the book. So, and I'm happy to have them expanded. And Stephen King is apparently very happy with the show as well, and I'm not surprised. So,
is that right?
Yeah,
I have not checked. That's reassuring, because they're possibly doing stuff that's going to like break what he's doing. So maybe that means they're not. Maybe it's going to be good.
He's consulted. He was a consultant on the movies. He was obviously had a cameo in the second movie. And I know he's been maybe even more closely consulting in this show, perhaps. So he's definitely well abreast of what they're doing, and keeps saying he's very happy with it. So that's good. I think a question that we shouldn't answer now, because we probably have an idea, but just to point out, it's very interesting that this car from 1935 is buried with the bodies inside. Like, that's a weird thing for a car to wind up buried in the earth.
Sure. And also, it's weird that it really seemed like it did have a psychic trace, and then it didn't when they pulled it up.
Right.
Significant or not, it's interesting.
So I wonder if like they talked about in a previous episode about there being these, I forget the words they use, but these totems or whatever that are buried.
Like a beacon, maybe?
A beacon. Yeah, that's right. They use the word beacon, that are buried around where they were going to use these totems to try to triangulate where the entity is they're actually going for.
Sure.
And so I wonder if by digging these up, they are lessening these protections that were keeping the monster at bay.
Like breaking the seal on the dark one. Sorry, I'm going to stop with the Wheel of Time stuff.
If you don't get a reference, just assume it's from the Wheel of Time, listeners.
Yeah, that's right. Because I'll over-explain it if it's a King reference. If it's not, it's a Wheel of Time reference. Yeah, I have so many questions, and this is for me, and I don't mean like the kind of lore question I just had about Halloran and his grandmother. This is where I'm intrigued / worried. Like the military knowing all. So, okay. He says, we get an info dump from General Shaw that whatever they're looking for was buried in Derry 300 years before the automobile was even invented. So like 1600. How does he know that? Why does he know that? Who knows that? How would somebody outside of Derry? We've learned that people forget about it when they leave Derry. So who in the government or the military not only knows that there's this creature in there, but knows that it was buried in 1600 or earlier? Like, what does that come from? Did they do radiocarbon dating? Did they talk to the natives? Because it seems like they have not been talking to the tribe.
Well, we know that Mike Hanlon, that in the chapter 2 of the movie, he tells that whole backstory, how he went to go speak to the tribe and learned all this various backstory stuff. And in that montage sequence, we saw some memory of some member of the tribe looking at a meteorite crashing to Earth hundreds of years ago. And we know they're looking for something that's hundreds of years old. So,
but like, we saw how they got that information, right? And isn't that kind of almost seen in a vision, kind of like?
Well, I assumed that Mike was saying that they told him that. And I've seen some people question, is the older Native man that Mike speaks to, in the 2016 part of the storyline, could that be a grown-up version of the
Teenager guy,
the
nephew,
Joshua Ajak? Tennille is his name.
maybe. Like, but it's just, again, that is the tribe in the Derry area who have been here. Like, there's something that it's a little Hawking's lab for me, right? A little bit like, really, the military knows not only this, but they know the 300-year history of this entity. I don't know.
But the
Maybe
tribe
it's going to
knows
be
it.
great.
Yeah, but so that is the question. How does the military know it? And this is my other question, because Shaw, he says he didn't remember Rose until he came back, until he got the cease and desist letter for her. We'll get to that
Yep.
in the next section. Which, okay, tracks with everything we know about this entity, but he did still have the slingshot and knew that it was linked somehow to the entity they're looking for. So what does Shaw actually remember and know?
He brought the slingshot from he's stationed in Camp Pendleton in San Diego County, and they say, sorry, you're being transferred for this secret project. Coincidentally, you happen to be someone who maybe fought this thing as a kid.
We're coincidentally, but
well, okay, sure. They know it was him. They send him. Oh, and don't forget, you got to bring the slingshot with you to base. And it's just, it might all be fine, but it also might just break the rules, so to speak, where people don't remember. And if you do remember, you're struck with fear. And like, there's a lot of coincidence there that maybe is not a coincidence. Maybe it's deliberate, but it just opens up, in the same way that like aliens you're like, where's he going with this? Aliens in Indiana Jones rubbed people the wrong way, right? Because it felt like you were blurring your lines. Military conspiracies don't feel of a piece to the story of it. So we have to see where they go with it. I'm not criticizing it yet, but this is the phase where I'm most concerned that the story will go off the rails a little bit. But I hope it doesn't. Because there might be a cool way to tie it together.
I mean, we still have more than half the season, so I'm assuming that they're going to explain all of this. But I also want to know, like, we know the military, they want, let's say that it's the meteorites. This is me making a bit of an assumption, but an educated guess. So they're looking for this meteorite, presumably because they know it generates fear. And we know they know this because they wanted to use Henlon.
Yep.
Leroy Henlon for it because of his damaged amygdala and doesn't experience fear. Although I was going to question, did he fear for Halloran when he almost jumped out of the helicopter? So what does the military think that they're going to do if they find this meteorite? They know that the fear is uncontrollable and like they have basically maybe one person who can handle it. What are their plans?
What are they going to like drop Pennywise into the Soviet territory? Yeah, it is a weird. Yeah. But that feels like following in a rich tradition of short-sighted corporations and scientists and militaries. We're going to harness the power of the xenomorph kind of stuff.
Right.
It doesn't feel very though, right? Because what the adults in Derry do is sweep stuff under the rug. They're not harnessing the power. So we can almost think of like three kinds of people that they're providing for us. There's the infected in Derry, the adults that are under the sway of Pennywise that essentially are like, the callous indifference of humanity is brought to the surface. There's people that are in the know, that are kids or kids that experienced it, that then grow up to be adults that stay in the know. And then there's these third people that are in the know, but aren't necessarily working against it, but maintain their independence. Like the guys on the base are not being pulled into the callous indifference of the spell of Pennywise. So it's kind of weird. Like, they're like a mix of outsider and insider. Do it well, Muschietti. Like, don't ruin it. That's all I'm saying.
This ties into just the way that, as we've been referencing, they're tying together the Stephen King mythology more overall, which, I mean, I'm only surprised by just because of the fact that Stephen King rights to Stephen King properties are spread across different things. Like you were saying
Hmm.
before, wouldn't it be interesting if they did Dark Tower from Warner Brothers on HBO also and could directly tie these two together? But they're not. That's being developed at Prime, apparently. So that's the only reason why I'm like, wow, what do they actually have the rights to? But in general, in Stephen King books, the military does pop up fairly regularly as an enemy entity, and sometimes with these, like I think of Dreamcatcher is one, or The Long Walk. You know, we just there's the character from The Long Walk, which, by the way, The Long Walk on video on demand. So I don't know if
Already.
you're interested
Okay.
in watching that.
100%. I haven't seen it yet, but
Okay.
and I haven't read that, but I'm super interested. Yeah, it's we already said like it's not all horror, right? He's a
Hmm.
multi-genre author. He's got prison films, he's got horror films, or sorry, stories. He's got vampire stories, he's got UFO stories. Some of them have the military, but it is a kids on bike story, right? And so it yeah, maybe it'll all be good. And I'm not prejudging it. I'm just wincing a little bit.
Okay.
So we'll see.
All right. So we've teased it a lot. Let's jump to the other side. The Guardians of the Ghoulish. A grown up Rose, who now runs the town's pawn shop, speaks up at a meeting of the local Native American community, which is nervous about the military poking around in the woods. She says they will write a cease and desist letter to hold them back, but admits to the younger Tennille that she doesn't really want to stop the military just yet. She wants to find out what exactly they're looking for. She gets the chance when General Shaw shows up at her shop, having suddenly remembered her and their young summer together. He's gotten her cease and desist letter and tells her they're surveying to lay water pipes. They agree to work together so that she can guide him away from the quote unquote ancient burial grounds the tribe is trying to protect. So obviously they're both lying to each other here. And this is where it's like, I feel like Shaw is, as far as the adults in Derry go, he is one of the better ones in terms of being maybe not like just a horrible person at heart. Um, and Rose clearly obviously seems like one of the good ones. But they are lying to each other. You know, she's talking
Hmm.
about these ancient burial grounds that she's hiding, and who knows what she told him when they were kids that may or may not be coming back to him, or he may or may not have remembered in the meantime. And then meanwhile, he's like, you show me where to stay away from, which obviously is him saying, show me exactly where we need to
Where to
look.
go?
Yeah.
But we don't know. Is he trying to screw her over? Is he? How much affection is Ernest there? Like, are they on the same side, kind of, but they're lying to each other, still sort of protectively? I would believe any direction there, frankly. It is interesting the way they're kind of trying to play each other. And I love that she does the boneheaded thing of let's write a cease and desist letter and then immediately goes, well, yeah, because I know it won't work.
Right.
It's like
It's not
perfect.
my
Yeah,
goal
no,
right
good.
now.
I mean, that's
I'm just
exactly
trying to
what she
appease
wants.
the council right now. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm very interested to see where this Tennille goes. I really Joshua Odjick, who plays him, he was one of the most memorable parts of The Long Walk, as I said. So very curious about this character that they've now teased twice, but haven't told us anything more. Like we don't even know how he Rose's son or nephew or
He says auntie, but I don't know if that's
oh,
like
okay, or if that's just like
cultural auntie
general,
or if
right,
actual auntie.
right,
He's also a very interesting age. I feel like he is not a very it age. Like the it ages are like 11 or 12
right.
or 27 years after 11 or 12. So like
Yeah.
40-ish. And he's like 20 something and you're like, "Whoa, so what is that? Do you kind of know about it? You kind of don't? Like where are you in the scheme of being an adult and turning into a sort of callous dairy citizen? Where are you when you're 22 years old, right?"
Right.
Um,
Right. Because if you are not in the cycles as a child of being affected by it, do you believe in it less?
Yeah, right. If you're what age you are when he was an infant or maybe not even born yet the last cycle, right? So like you can kind of skirt by never having had the bad luck of being its prey, right?
Mhm.
So maybe if you're 25, maybe you just never had instances of seeing it. So he may know about it only as a kind of like thing that his auntie tells about. I don't know. We're getting derailed here, but
Right. No, but
you don't see a
he's
lot of 20 somethings,
yeah.
you
He
know?
is at the age of, I think, maximum activism too, where he's just going to be
Mm,
very like righteous. And we don't know how much he knows about these quote unquote ancient burial grounds himself, but
sure.
he's going to be in a place where he's like, don't touch our cultural heritage, you know?
Right.
So I think he could be an igniting factor in events that play out. It's
Sure.
interesting. Shaw doesn't remember Rose allegedly, so that's showing that the base is outside the entity's radius of influence, which also makes it interesting that, of course, the Hanlons chose not to live on the base, but rather to live in town, which makes sense,
Mm.
obviously, for his wife and son. But I'm wondering if Mike's just not going to be able to see the hallucinations that others see, so maybe it will take him longer to believe his son and perhaps even his wife.
Or can he see the hallucinations, but it doesn't affect him, right? We don't know yet.
I feel like it plays on your fear in creating the hallucinations, like a
Yeah.
nightmare. Plays on your anxieties.
Why would it bother to hallucinate him, right? Because a lot of times there's horrific stuff happening in the supermarket, but the adults just don't see it, right? So because Pennywise isn't trying to draw fear out of them. So yeah, once it learns that he can't suffer fear, you would think it wouldn't bother with any of the illusions and stuff at all. Um,
Right.
so interesting.
Yeah. Um, just a note about the tribe. I am glad, the second movie got criticized for adding the local tribe to add some like exotic quote unquote mysticism. But here they've made an effort to actually give them a voice. And the tribe in the show, I forget how they pronounce it, the
Is it Shokapua or something?
Shokapawa? Yeah, something like that.
Shokopua? I don't
Anyway,
know.
it's a fictional tribe. It doesn't, so again, we'll hear next week how they pronounced it. Apologies for that. But they did work alongside a real indigenous tribe from the area, the Wabanaki Confederacy, which, as I said earlier, they're Eastern Algonquin. So we could expect the fictional tribe to reflect that as well. That's just the Algonquins are a group that were basically all over the eastern woodlands. Like Pocahontas was also Virginia Algonquin. So I do think it's interesting. I said that just a bit of linguistics. So Algonquin is a language family, but it's not like mutually intelligible, not even to the degree that, say, English and German is. The languages can be quite different from each other, but it's, I'm a linguist. I have to take a little linguist deep dive. I did notice something interesting when I was looking up this Wabanaki Confederacy that they consulted with to create this fictional tribe. And the name Wabanaki, it comes from Wab in their language means like light, and
Hmm.
then Aki means land. So they call it like dawn land, basically. But what I just found interesting about it is that in the Potawatomi language, another Algonquin tribe from the east, Wab means white. And I know this for certain because my grandmother's native name is Wabjijak, which means white crane. And yeah, white is all light together, right?
Sure.
So it just shows how the linguistic trace of these two concepts that definitely are coming from the same place but ended up meaning different things. Anyway, sorry, that was just a little digression.
Yeah, I mean, I think if they're a subfamily of languages, like you could say Indo-European or something is one, like
Right, more
there's root
closely
words
even
that
that,
are
but yeah.
similar,
Hmm.
like across,
Right, like ma, yeah.
centuries of separation and thousands of miles, right? So that's not surprising at all that there would be some sort of lineage that would be related,
Right.
even if the languages are not mutually intelligible.
Do you want to set up the dinner party?
Leroy Hanlon invites Dick Halloran over for dinner with him and his wife, Charlotte, and appreciates when Dick backs him up on the dangers of being a black man in the military with an activist wife, but grows suspicious when Dick asks after Leroy's son, Will, about whom Leroy hasn't spoken. He realizes that Dick is a psychic, especially after the helicopter incident, and that he's been reading his mind, and he asks him to stop. He also realizes that he was the third man standing silently in the room the night Leroy was attacked by soldiers pretending to be Russian to test Leroy's fear. Dick says not to worry. He doesn't want to go back into Leroy's mind again, as he was unnerved by his cool, calculated response in place of the usual human emotions in such a situation. And he realized Leroy is a man he does not want to mess with.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have that much to add to this scene, but just to acknowledge that there was I think it's because the series of conversations themselves were so self-explanatory, and a lot of people were saying in the Discord that this was their favorite sequence from the episode.
Yeah, I also interestingly don't have a lot to say, but I also really liked this. It was character development. We get to learn a little more about Charlotte, the tensions related to what she has sacrificed to be here. And they did so in pretty few words. We get to learn more about the interaction of the psychic, well, essentially Halloran's powers and Hanlon's powers, if we can call his fear response a power, his lack of fear response. Yeah, this was a cool scene. I don't have much more to say, but
I mean, yeah, I liked
seeing where this goes.
And we had this conversation last week about the outside perspective and whether that affects your experience of interaction with Yellow Eyes. And it is interesting that we see, for instance, with Rich and the references to Santeria, and now we have in this scene, Leroy says, "Place where I grew up, everybody knew someone who was like that," in terms of Dick Halloran's psychic trance. I just never seen it for myself. And yeah, so that's
interesting.
Like, are they more tuned into it because it's sort of in the zeitgeist? Like, these are thoroughly Americanized people, but with connections that keep them more aware of things like Jean would call it the loi. Here we have it called the orichas. So yeah, just a question. And then my other big question for this is, why is Halloran so interested in Will? Does he sense something in him?
That's interesting. I hadn't thought about that. Because he obviously read his mind to at least that's
he
what
he read Leroy's mind, but why
he
is
read
interested in
Leroy's
his son?
mind to know of the existence of Will. It could just be that. It could just be their way of telling us, of getting us to the point that they openly are discussing this power. I hadn't thought that it was actually Will being significant. Has he interacted with Will at all? I don't think so, right?
No, because that's why Leroy's like, how do you even know he exists?
That's interesting. I hadn't even thought about that. I kind of don't. My inclination is that it's probably nothing, but that's interesting. We can watch that.
Yeah. Okay, let's take a quick break here. And when we come back, we're going to wrap up by talking about the Kids' Quest. Okay, and we're back. And so to set this up, Lily and Ronnie recruit Will Hanlon and his new friend Rich to help them on their quest to take a photo of the entity that has been tormenting them, the thing that actually killed the other kids in that movie theater. The boys are happy to hang out with the girls, but do not take their fears seriously. Rich, who is Cuban American, tells the others about the Santeria ceremony to summon spirits, which Lily thinks could be how they get the ghost photo to exonerate Ronnie's father. But when they get to the graveyard, they realize Rich is faking it, and he doesn't actually know how it's supposed to work. Frustrated, They start to leave the cemetery when the entity does arrive, chasing them with ghosts of the rotting corpses of friends and family. The children manage to snap several photos and escape, and in the school's dark room, Will shows the others how to develop them, and they see that they have indeed captured some of the ghosts and ghouls on film. In the last image they develop, there is even the shape of a demonic-looking clown. Ha 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 ha.
Hmm.
So first of all, I feel 1,000 people yelling at the screen. No way Will is going to frickin' walk into the crypts like that, but
Yeah. So also, real quick, just clarifying something you just said. What was it? That they realize Rich is faking it? I don't think he's faking it. I
but
think
he doesn't
just
know how it works. He's
it's just like
pretending he knows how it
hearsay
works.
and he's trying. Like, I don't think
Yeah.
he's like lying to them. He's more just like more clueless than anything. And like he didn't fess up to that. How tertiarily he had ever encountered any of this stuff. But anyways, this plot line is very classically it in so many ways, which is cool. But also, this is my other kind of, this scene in the cemetery is like really fun, but it feels so much like a Disneyland ride. They're just like going along, and then a ghost swoops in, duck and drop it, and it felt like it was on rails, like video game level kind of thing. And I don't know. I don't know. I don't want to crap on it too much, but I feel like this one's going to rub some people the wrong way too.
It definitely did in the Discord. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I haven't checked yet.
I mean, we wanted it to not be another birthing scare, and it wasn't. But I understand why people are like, well, the other ones have been so visceral, and this just seems so kind of not half-hearted, but you know what I mean. I thought it was fun. I was fine with it. It probably could have gone on for less long with a little less of the silly dropping the camera thing. Like I even thought that maybe she would leave the camera hanging in the tree and then just come back and get it the next day and develop the pictures then, but whatever.
My family just watched with our kids the 90s Casper movie.
I loved that growing up.
It just feels like that a little bit. These like cartoony kind of ghosts, just like, I don't know, like it. I'm not going to complain about the CG per se. It's the framing of the scene that didn't quite work for me. The CG looks fine. The ghosts look fine. The earth shaking looks fine. But just the video gamey kids movie thing about it feels a little disjointed to me. But yeah, we can move on. I don't want to harp on that too much.
Well, just to talk a bit about Rich and the Santeria, which is obviously, we reference this a bit, but Santeria, like voodoo, in Brazil, they have candomblé. These are new interpretations of African religions. In the case of Santeria, it's based on the Yoruba religion from West Africa. And so we hear that he talks about so as you said, it's an Afro-Cuban thing, really, which clearly Rich is not Afro-Cuban, but it's all part of the culture in which he grew up. And so he says that he puts in an uncle who's a Babalao, which is a priest in Santeria. And the way the ceremony probably should have gone is that it would have more likely involved a sacrifice of like an animal sacrifice of some sort and some sort of dancing, which none of that was present because Rich doesn't actually know what the ceremony is about. So it would be interesting if we actually see him go back and try to learn what it really is, and if the kids try to enact that then. I do think it's interesting, though, that he also said the really mean ones, the really mean Orichas, the spirits, took the form of their dead ancestors. And you see, obviously, the girls look at each other because they've been haunted by that with this entity.
So I'm struck by like the question of, not the question, but the understanding that like they are ascribing a mythological identity to this thing in the same way that, not to always make it about Stranger Things, but they just adopt the Demigorgon, this monster in Dungeons and Dragons. We're going to adopt that as or Vecna as the villain that we're actually fighting. And that makes sense. You know, you interpret something supernatural with your sort of cultural framing, and you could say that the cultural mythologies that have emerged around the world might be representations of people's kind of different cultures' interpretations of supernatural events. So like, okay, it's an Oni in one part of the world, or it's an Orisha here, or a demon in certain other parts of the world. But it's just interesting because they're wrong. Like this is not one of many evil spirits. Like this is a very singular. We learned throughout the Stephen King mythos that Pennywise is not completely singular, but this is not a thing where there is this pantheon of demons and evil spirits that are constantly harassing people globally. Like, so it's just interesting.
I mean, there's definitely another one at the Overlook Hotel. So,
but it's not of the same ilk as Pennywise. So I guess it's just an example because it sort of subverts. There's oftentimes a trope in science fiction and supernatural horror and stuff, it seems to me, where someone will say, oh, well, that's that. Like Pet Sematary. Oh, it's a Wendigo. I think it's a Wendigo, right? That's what it is in Pet Sematary. And like there's this native myth that we're... And it happens in The Outsider too. Like someone, and I'm trying to remember which one that is, but there's often sort of the old world knowledge that comes in and says, well, this is actually what it is. And that totally happens here. And it's totally not correct. Like this is,
I mean, but
if Orishas are real, that's not what this is.
But is it, I mean, if Orishas are real, they're also the Loa, they're tied to Catholic saints, I believe, in Santeria too. And
I think they have equivalency, sort of.
Right. And so it is just the tying together of these ideas that who's to say what you call an Orisha is always the same thing. It just might be your word for spirits, and there might be many different types of spirits. But it doesn't
Pennywise
mean
is a thing that exists here, right? It exists only in Derry. If the only people really who have an authentic cultural explanation would be that tribe, right? In the sense that, or colonists, like let's say that English colonists came around the same time that Pennywise came. And not to say that in the entire Stephen King universe there aren't things like Pennywise, but this is not the turtle, which touches kind of all of creation on some level. This is not vampires, which could exist in Stephen King throughout Salem's Lot, but also can show up in other stories.
Dr. Sleep.
Potential. Yeah. Dr. Sleep. Those are sort of vampires, like sort of similar. Pennywise is singular in a way that, like, unless there is an equivalent thing that has multiplicity and multiple aspects that exists in Cuba or in Nigeria, where the Yoruba language or religion would be coming up with its mythology, it sort of can't be right, which is just an interesting sort of difference for a lot of horror film and stuff.
I would just say that it's probably that human understanding is incomplete. And we might just paint by the same brush, like, oh, malevolent spirits. We call them by this name in my culture.
Right.
And they might be different types, but...
And ultimately it comes to nothing. Like what he's doing doesn't matter. It's that, and he talk about incomplete understanding. He really didn't, Rich doesn't have a complete understanding of it. But it doesn't matter because they get confronted by it no matter what anyways.
Right. So they get the pictures and, because Lily says to Ronnie, people only believe what they can see for themselves, which true. But what do we think the chances are that the adults are going to be able to see these pictures? I just think of in the original movie, I mean, actually both versions of the movie, we see Beverly, she gets the sink gunk blood goo spewed all over herself, and her father can't see it, but the other kids can. And I'm wondering if we're going to get the same situation with the pictures where the kids are like, see, the ghosts are in the pictures, and the adults are like, I don't know, I see like a tree, blurry Ronnie biking by in the cemetery.
No idea. I'm super interested to see what comes of it. Again, the military knows about this though, so there's evidence that persists even outside of the city limits of Derry, Maine. So I don't know what rules they're following. I don't feel like there's photographs in the original stories, which is fascinating. I don't know why there wouldn't be. So I don't remember if that's something that is relevant really here, but we'll
Right.
see.
So we also have to talk about the romance element because we know this is a prequel to characters who come later. So we see Will's crush on Ronnie. I'm worried about Ronnie based on her name. But we also see something that we talked about, I think, on the Discord, but haven't yet talked about on the podcast. Rich's crush on Marge. Marge is played by Matilda Lawler, whom people might recognize from Station 11 or season 2 of The Gilded Age. And so we have Rich and we have Marge, a nickname for Margaret. We don't know Rich's last name, by the way, but we know that Rich uses the words like tatas. Are these Richie Tozier's parents?
I mean, why? Like, it could be, sure. I don't.
This town's only so big.
Town's only so big, and I don't know what Rich's last name is. Tozier doesn't seem Cuban, but he might not have a Cuban last name, Spanish aligned last name. His family name could be an adopted name of his parent. I mean, the same way that mine is, right? We don't know any of that, but also it's a little like using that word writerly again to like come up with some complicated way. Like, if just give him the last name Tozier and tell us if you want that to be true. Like, I don't need it to be a secret. And then in episode 8, they're like, oh, and by the way, I'm going to name a kid Richie.
Yeah, it's the only kid whose last name we don't know. But just the fact that they have him speaking in this way, like Will was not like, I don't want to talk about people's tatas, but Richie Tozier would totally talk about people's tatas, which seems like something he could have picked up from his dad. So that's my operating theory at the moment.
Or they're saying an essential element to the kid dynamics is that one of them needs to be a little trash mouthy and a little bit more fast talking, comedic. And we kind of had that a little bit with the false start, the first group, the kid, the taller kid. What was his name? He was a little bit like that too. Watching the neighbor lady undress and stuff like that. What was that guy's name? Not Teddy, the other one who died. Phil or something. So it may just be that they're going, hey, let's make another kind of like fast talking kid and name him Rich, right?
Right.
I don't need it to be that their parents, I don't hate it, but also like, who's to say like, I don't know. I didn't grow up and marry and have kids with the girl I had a crush on when I was 12.
You grew up in Derry.
That's true. I did not grow up in a small town. That is very true. But also like, it doesn't need to be that he and Marge get together. Like, I don't. They could do that and it's fine, or they could do that and it makes the world feel even smaller. So we'll see.
I mean, yeah, I think it should feel like a small town. And what's the point in having this generational story if we don't actually get into the generations, which we have clearly outright done with the Hanlons. That's one that we know. They are Mike Hanlons.
Can I throw a wrench in that?
Sure.
If you're one of the losers and you grow up and you have kids and the cycle of it is starting and your kid is the age to do what you did 27 years earlier, are you really not saying a word of it? Or is Richie Tozier's parents really...
Did we see him interact with his parents?
We don't see a lot of Richie's parents. I think Richie's family is less chaotic than most of them. We don't have a lot of like negative stuff about Richie's parents, but we also don't have a scene where his dad's like, hey son, we got to have a talk. And he's like, I already know about the birds and the bees, dad. And he's like, no, not that. We got to talk monsters. And if you stay in Derry and you're a loser, everything that we're seeing about Rose, everything we see about Mike Hanlon, you seem to kind of remember, and you never totally become the clueless. I feel like that feels a little bit like a retcon. If Richie Tozier's parents are two of the primary actors in possibly bringing down Pennywise 27 years earlier, that feels like they're going to have like some kind of explanation for why their memory gets wiped or whatever, because that's just a little bit like, it's one thing when it was Stan Uris, who's one of the losers in the timeline, his uncle or something maybe just
Mm-hmm.
got murdered in the first episode of this season,
Right.
right? I can believe that let's say that other kid, the older brother at the table,
Mm-hmm.
let's say that's Stanley's dad or something like that. I
Yeah.
could see that kid growing up, Stan as a kid growing up, knowing that his uncle died as a kid, but kind of never learning the details. That's different because his dad never knew what happened. Stan, if Teddy was, if Teddy's older brother is Stan's dad, Teddy's older brother didn't know that Teddy was murdered by a monster, right?
Right.
So that could be lost to family history, but not if it's Rich who's running from ghosts. Like, again, assuming they don't leave Derry, right? So I guess I feel like that stretches it if that's true.
I mean, I think so. I'm always thinking about this story from the allegorical perspective, where this is a story about intergenerational trauma. And what is true is in real life, adults tend to forget the trauma of things that they went through as children, so that when their own children go through it again, they'll be like, oh, but I went through that as a kid. But it's not, they don't completely grok what their child is experiencing, so it could play on that in some way. But indeed, yeah, we don't, in the movie version at least, we don't know enough about the Toziers. Like, I think we see them on screen for like a second. Yeah, so that it leaves, in my estimation, it leaves some wiggle room there.
I need some explanation for why they're absentee in the 80s film timeline or the
Right.
50s book timeline. So
Maybe Richie just didn't trust them enough to confide in them what was going on.
yeah, but like they know, right? They know.
I mean, but
they know what's going on.
Like, do they really remember, even though they're in Derry?
I don't know. Yeah, I this is something you told me. Stephen King likes this. Like, if they make them his parents and satisfactorily explain that, Stephen King would like it. I think if they don't, Stephen King wouldn't. So we'll see. Maybe he knows something I don't know.
Okay.
I think it's either not true or it's true, and they found a way to finesse it.
All
Because
right.
they're asking the same. Somebody in that writer's room is asking the same thing as me. Well, what about the entire fact that these characters don't get mentioned in the novel much? So they're not dumb. They've read it. I hope they've read it. We'll see. It's fun to think. I think it's great to have a character like that who's falling in love, like, and he's just like talking about her like nobody else exists, kind of on some level. It's just it's fun. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe Marge is just kind of never going to be a part of their little clique, but we'll see.
All right. Do you have any final thoughts on the episode?
No, I'm looking forward to what's next, our halfway point.
Yeah, the title of next week is The Great Swirling Apparatus of Our Planet's Function, which is a fantastic title.
Wow,
So
what is that?
I'm guessing Will's going to take center stage as Science Boy and talk about the rotating of the Earth. Maybe we'll get some cosmic teases.
Cosmic stuff. Yeah, the rotating Earth on top of the back of a turtle. Do we think we're going to see a Skarsgård next week for real?
I mean, the fact that it ended with the Pennywise tease, yeah, I think we're going to get Pennywise in action next week.
It's interesting because I think they overuse Pennywise in the books, or excuse me, in the films. He's too often Pennywise because they want to use Skarsgård. Right. You know, when it turns into the spider in the books, the spider doesn't have a clown face, but they're like, we've got this actor everybody loves, and now they're like underusing him kind of on some weird way because he's probably expensive and busy. But we got to get him eventually, right?
Right. I mean, yeah, we know he's showing up this season. Now we got the tease. I like that there's more variety that reflects that. Of course, Yellow Eyes wouldn't take the same form every single time, but of course, I want to see Bill Skarsgård. He does. I rewatched obviously the It movies, and then I watched the making of documentaries from behind the scenes, and it is so incredible and creepy to see the human, the real person, Bill Skarsgård, do without the makeup on the Pennywise faces. Like, he's doing camera tests or there are clips of his audition. And first of all, he can separate the functioning of his eyes so he can make them askew. And
He's actually doing that?
he's actually doing that. And
Oh,
he
wow.
also has this incredible control of, like, he has more muscles in his lips than, like, I don't know, I have in my arms or something. But like he can just like flatten parts of his lips and like just do weird things with his mouth that create these crazy contortions, not to mention what he does with his body to do this sort of jaunty, creepy clown dance thing. So
Wow.
yeah, I'm excited for him to show up.
That's great.
But I also am glad that they're employing variety.
Awesome. Let's see.
Right. Well, I'll do most of the intro on my own, but you want to catch us up on what's going on in Nevermind the Music? This is going to drop today. So I think this week, actually, my episode with you guys is coming out, right?
What's going on in Nevermind the Music is there's you. You came on today's episode. We're recording on Tuesday the 11th to talk about Superman and Hope Punk. And you don't have to have seen the Superman film to enjoy the conversation. We don't spoil it, really. We just sort of talk about some themes that are introduced early on in that film and how it relates to music and the brain and stuff. It's a really fun episode. Really cool to have the Lorehounds on our episodes proper. So yeah, check it out, everybody.
Yeah. It was a fun conversation. Just like this was.
Yeah, this was a blast. Thanks so much for letting me partially fill some big shoes. I'm super curious to hear if John's enjoying the stuff that we're enjoying and if he's sketchy at the things that I'm sketchy on. We'll have to ask him.
Yeah. Looking forward to hearing his thoughts on it. He's not here this week to rein us in, so we crossed the 2-hour mark.
Oh my, yeah.
Predictable.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was great. Thank you for sharing the, insider book fan mythology behind all this. And obviously I think next week might be a big week for it based on that title.
Looking forward to it.
And thank you to everyone who's listening along. If you're listening in the Lorehounds horror feed, currently called Welcome to Derry, a Lorehounds podcast, then you can find a bunch of our other episodes in the main feed, including currently weekly coverage of Pluribus, and there will be one-shots coming up covering the new Frankenstein movie and Predator Badlands, amongst other things. And also, actually, I think it's going to be a 1-week series covering the new American Revolution series with our resident historian, Brian. Anyway, check out all of that on the main feed. On the horror feed, you will find, the Frankenstein coverage, this coverage, and check out our backlog as well. You can also find in the show notes a link tree where you can find a link to our Discord, where we have a forum for it with conversations set up per episode so that you can jump right in and discuss with full spoilers per episode, depending on what pace you're watching at. And also that for pretty much all of the other shows that we're covering at the same time. So find that in the link tree in the show notes. Also links to our affiliates, Nevermind the Music, where you can find Mark and Nicole, Properly Howard, Rings and Rituals, Radioactive Ramblings, my own Wool Shift Dust, where you'll find some more Frankenstein coverage, and the Star Wars Canon Timeline podcast. And if you want to get deeper into the Lorehounds community, we have our Supercast and Patreon feeds with lots of extras like the upcoming Robert Redford Film Festival. A big thank you to all of our listeners. Please do share this episode with anyone else who's enjoying the It's Welcome to Derry show and would like some more in-depth coverage of what exactly is going on in it. And if you are enjoying this, a positive rating or review wherever you're listening is also a huge help. Just the usual shout out to our Discord server boosters, Aaron K, Tiller the Thriller, Duve71, Athena Angelea, Lestu, Nancy M, Ghost of Partition, Radioactive Richard, and Adrian. And thank you most especially to our highest tier of subscribers, our lore masters, Samartian, Michael G, Michelle E, SC, Peter OH, Nancy M, Duve71, Brian 8063, Frederick H, Sarah L, Gareth C, Andra B, Kwang Yu, Nathan T, Sub-Zero, Aaron K, Deli V, Mothership 61, Gnarls, Kathy W, Lestu, Jeffrey B, Elisa U, Ben B, Scott F, Stephen N, Julia F, Carly S, Ilmariel, Paul K, Rocky Zim, Jessica H, Red Zippy, the TCS, Dopamini, Catch It, and always last, Adrian. Thank you for listening to the Lorehounds. Please send any questions and feedback to horror@thelorehounds.com and check out our Supercast and Patreon feeds for ad-free access and bonus episodes. Any opinions stated are ours personally and do not reflect the opinion of or belong to any employers or other entities. Thank you for listening.